Good morning. So I've noticed that Watchtower has taken legal action against some internet sites to take down their secret letters. Those secret letters should never have been written in the first place. So I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts from them to show you what Watchtower was hiding. And it will also demonstrate the attitude that Watchtower has towards people that belong to the organisation. Now, first of all, these letters are in the public domain because I read from them in my court case. First of all, we'll go to the 1989 letter. This is July the 1st, and it's talking about those that take legal action against Watchtower. It says, the spirit of the world has sensitized people regarding their legal rights, and the word rights is in inverted commas. Then they go on, a growing number of vindictive or disgruntled ones, as well as opposers, have initiated lawsuits, and they believe it's because you want money. Now, they're calling people vindictive or disgruntled, but they have forgotten what it says in Proverbs 21 and verse 13. It says, he who shuts his ear to the poor man's cry shall himself plead and not be heard. They don't believe you have any right to complain, but what are we complaining about? We don't want Watchtower's harmful actions to harm anybody else. That's why we take them to court, to protect other people. And they've forgotten that human rights come from the scriptures. A lot of our legal systems, judicial systems, are taken from the scriptures because there we were taught about judges, how to judge, don't be prejudiced, listen to both sides, and so on. It's from the scriptures. But they don't believe you have those rights. So I will now go on to a similar letter. It was very similar to that 1989 letter. And this is the 2014, November the 6th. And they're talking here about confidential matters, so-called. It says, and I'll just try and bring it up a little bit, you should never reveal confidential information to anyone unless the branch office tells you that you can. And then they explain who that you're not to give information to. It may include an investigator, a lawyer, policeman, detective, government officials, school personnel, so on and so forth. And you're not allowed to tell them about written materials, unwritten knowledge possessed by elders. It applies to records pertaining to a particular case, letters from the organisation, which is what I'm reading to you now, the shepherding textbook and the organised book. They don't want the police knowing any of these things. And why not? What have they got to hide? Paragraph 14 of the same letter. When elders learn of criminal activity, they should immediately call the legal department. Well, you know that already. And it says that in some cases, elders will form a judicial committee to handle alleged wrongdoing that may also constitute a violation of criminal law. For example, murder, rape, child abuse, fraud, theft, or assault. And they say that you mustn't delay the judicial committee process, but strict confidentiality must be maintained to avoid unnecessary entanglement with the secular authorities. For example, even the fact that a judicial committee has been formed should not be disclosed to persons not entitled to know. So, if elders initiate a judicial committee on false accusations, which they do all the time, and that person can't cope with it and commits suicide, The police will investigate the suicide, but Watchtower will hide their involvement in that event. And that is a hit and run tactic. It was these letters which turned the tide in my judicial court case here in Ireland. The judge was not happy with this. What have they got to hide? Well, it demonstrates the attitude of the governing body, doesn't it? In the book of Matthew, and it's chapter 23 and verse 2, it's talking about the scribes and Pharisees. It says, the scribes and Pharisees occupy the chair of Moses. Moses sat to judge the nation of Israel. And so the governing body have sat themselves in the seat of Jesus Christ. They've forgotten what it says in verse 11 and 12. The greatest among you must be your servant. Anyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and anyone who humbles himself will be exalted. I firmly believe the governing body will be humbled soon, in one way or another, because of their haughty actions. They've forgotten that Jesus is our Lord and Master. In the book of John, and we're chapter 13 and verse 13, when Jesus had finished washing the feet of his disciples, they got dusty, of course, walking in that dry land. He said, you call me Master and Lord, and rightly, so I am. Jesus is our Master and Lord, not the governing body. But if you listen to their broadcast, you would think that they were the Lord and Master. That Jesus goes on to say, I have given you an example for you to occupy. He said, no servant is greater than his master. So I'm sorry, dear ones, that this was a little bit depressing this morning. But I just want the governing body to change, to give them an opportunity to see that what they're doing with all their rules and regulations is becoming exactly like the scribes and Pharisees. They won't listen until the governments stop what they're doing. But because this is so depressing, I've taken a very short video of the lake here locally, and I'll put it up separately, and you might like to watch that, to show that our God is not represented by the governing body, but our God is kindly and generous and loves us greatly. And I hope the little view of the lake will help us keep that in mind. But thank you for watching this morning.